Morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Today's learning is sponsored in memory of Ita Golda Bas Avraham Yosef by Barry Steinberg. Neshama Shabbat Aliyah. Okay, so last Mishnah said that by the repetition of the Chazan on the 7 final fasts when there is a lack of rain, that there are 6 brachas that are added. And we said in the previous Mishnah what those additions were. And the Mishnah concluded that each one of these additions has their own concluding bracha, their own concluding blessing. So now Mishnah Dal is going to go through what those concluding blessings were. They weren't just blessings, but they were also a chasima, an ending plus a blessing. And what's important to note is that although we mentioned 6 extra brachas, however, the bracha of and these 6 extra brachas are inserted in between the bracha of Goel Yisrael, bracha to Hashem Goel Yisrael, and Refo'enu, like we did today by Anenu. Mm-hmm. What's interesting is that the bracha of Goel Yisrael, which is one of the standard brachas, not one of the extra 6, it's extended. It actually gets its own addition. Mm-hmm. So you're really going to have here. We're going to have 7 additions, but 6 extra brachas. Mm-hmm. So Mishnah Dalet begins, Mishnah 4, Parak Beis, Mishnah Dalet, chapter 2, Mishnah 4. Al Rishonahu Omer, on the first one, meaning on the first one here means Goel Yisrael, not the first of the 6, but the first of the additions. Hu Omer, the Chazan says, Mi Sha'anas Avram Bahara Maria, he who answered Abraham on Mount Moriah, Huyana Eschem, he shall respond to you. V'yishma b'kol tzakaschem, and he will listen to the sound of your cries. Hayem hazeh, on this day. Baruch atah Hashem, blessed are you Hashem, Goel Yisrael, Redeemer of Israel. When we talk about that Hashem should respond to us like he responded to Abraham, so on the bottom they explain it to like this. This refers to this Yitzchak, right? Mm-hmm. When Hashem told Avram to offer Yitzchak, and instead he offered a ram instead. Now, the Rishal. Now, through sparing Yitzchak, Hashem saved the entire Jewish nation who are descended from Yitzchak. We therefore add this prayer to the blessing of Goel Yisrael. Meaning, why are we inserting Avraham into Goel Yisrael, Redeemer of Israel? Because by saving Yitzchak, right, we have Klal Yisrael now. We have the Jewish people, and therefore we invoke the merit of the Akedah in the bracha of Goel Yisrael, the bracha of redemption. Now, it says, he who responded to Avram and Har Moriah. Hashem responded to Avram and Har Moriah? What did he respond to? Avram brought Yitzchak, ready to bring Yitzchak as a sacrifice, and Hashem stopped. Is that refer to Hashem responded to Avram? So they bring down here in the notes, Yerushalmi cites a prayer that Avram uttered there in which Hashem answered. Doesn't say what the prayer was here. They don't recite what it is. But Yerushalmi says there was some kind of a tefillah that Abraham offered there, and it was responded to. And therefore, when we say he who responded to Avram should respond to you. Next, Alashniyahu Omer, the second one, the Chazan adds, Bisha'ana esaveseinu al Yamsuf, he who responded to our forefathers by the Yamsuf, by the Red Sea, Huyana eschem, he shall respond to you. Vishma kol tzakaschem hayom hazeh, he shall hear the sound of your cries on this day. Baruch atah Hashem, blessed are you Hashem, zeicha nishkachais, he who remembers the forgotten. This is obviously the addition that's made to the Zechrinus, right? The first of the 6 additions is a section of Zechrinus where we utter, where we say verses of Hashem's remembrances as we do on Rosh Hashanah. And it's here where we invoke the merit of Mishna Yamsuf, he who responded to our forefathers by the Red Sea. Now, if I were to ask you, where did he respond to us by the Red Sea? It says they cried out, right? But it's interesting that here it says like this. Here they bring this down from Rashi in the notes. Hashem remembered and rescued the Jews who thought they had been forgotten after many years of slavery in Egypt and had given up hope of ever being redeemed. So, according to this Rashi, it doesn't sound so much like a responding to a prayer of sorts, but it's actually a response to their suffering. And this is a fitting conclusion to the verses of Zechrinus remembrances, which describe Hashem's attribute of remembering the deeds of mankind and the plight of the needy. So it fits very well into this section of Zechronis, because in these psukim of Zechronis, we talk about Hashem's attribute remembering the deeds of people and the plight of those who are in need. So therefore, it's in this section that we mention how Hashem responded to our forefathers in Egypt. For the third, he says, Mi sha'anas Yoshua ba-Gilgal. He responded to Yoshua in a place called Gilgal. Huyana eschem, he will respond to you, v'yishma kol tzakaschem hayom hazeh, and hear the sound of your cries on this day. Baruch ato Hashem, bless you Hashem, shemea truah, he who listens to truah, to the sound of the truah. So what are we referring to here by Yoshua? So they explain here in the notes, when the Jews were encamped at Gilgal, Yoshua led attack on Yericho, the first city that they conquered, which concluded the miraculous collapse of its walls. Since the miracle occurred as a result of blowing the shofar, we say this at the end of the blessing of shofars. Right? We just finished off, Baruch Ato Hashem Shemaya Trua. That is the conclusion for the section of shofars. The verses of shofars that we say in Rosh Hashanah and include in the repetition of the Shemoneh Esrei here by these fasts. So we include, we invoke the merit of Yeshua, who was able to miraculously conquer the city of Yericho, which happened with the blowing of the shofar, and therefore this is where that's what we include in the section of shofars. Excuse me. On the fourth one, he says, Mishna Shmuel ba mitzvah. He who responded to Shmuel in a place called Mitzvah. Huyana eschem, he will respond to you, and hear and listen to the sound of your cries on this day. Baruch ato Hashem, bless you Hashem, shemea tza'aka. The one who listens to cries, right? This is the first new bracha that we've seen. The other ones we're kind of familiar with. This is a brand new bracha. So we invoke the merit of Shmuel by this bracha. So they explain. Shmuel prayed at Mitzvah for the Jews to be saved from the attacking Philistines. Hashem answered his prayer and granted the Jews a miraculous victory. This is an appropriate ending for Psalm 120, which states, El Hashem batzarasi li karasi v'aneni. To Hashem in my distress, I called and he answered me. They're referring to the bracha in the beginning of Mishna Gimel. The first of the third of the added brachas was in Tehillim Kufchaf 120, which was to Hashem I call out in my distress and he answers me. It's here where we invoke the merit of Shmuel, because that's what happened by Shmuel. They had the tsar, they had the distress of attacking Philistines. Shmuel prayed and they were answered. On the fifth, he says, he will respond to Leo on Mount Carmel. Huyana eschem, he will respond to you. And listen to the sound of your cries on this day. Baruch ato Hashem, bless you Hashem, shemea tefillah, the one who listens to prayer. Okay, so what's happening here? They explain in the notes. On Mount Carmel, Eliyahu challenged idolaters of Baal, and God came to his aid by sending fire from heaven to consume his offering. As this occurred on a mountain, we mention it in connection to Tehillim 121, Kuf Chaf Aleph, which states, Esa Einai El Harim, I lift my eyes to the mountain. So referring to when Hashem responded to Eliyahu to show the people that the Baal was false and Eliyahu serving Hashem was true, that happened on a mountain, and therefore we invoke that merit by the chapter of Tehillim, which we add, which begins, Esa Einai El Harim, I turned my eyes to the mountains, and that miracle took place on a mountain. Okay, Alashishis on the sixth to Eimer, he says, he responded to Yonah from the belly of the fish. Huyana eschem, he shall respond to you. Vishma b'kol tzakaschem, and listen to the sound of your cries. Hayom hazeh, on this day. Baruch ato Hashem, blessed are you Hashem. Ha'ina be'sara, the one who answers in a time of distress. Okay, so Yonah didn't want to deliver the prophecy of Hashem. There was a storm. He was thrown into the water. He was swallowed by a fish. Inside that fish, he cried out to Hashem to be saved, and he was answered. So we include this merit in the chapter of Tehillim, which we add, which is Kuf Lamed 130, which begins, Mimamakim krasich Hashem, I call out to you from the depths. So this is where we invoke the story of Yonah, who also was in the depth of the belly of the fish, and his answer were prayers. His prayers were answered. Okay, so that's blessed you Hashem, who responds in a time of distress. And the final one, Al Hashiviyas hu Omer, on the 7th, he says, the Chazan says, Misha'ana es David v'Shlomo b'nei Yerushalayim. The one who responded to David and Shlomo his son Yerushalayim, to King David and King Solomon Yerushalayim. Huyana eschem, he will respond to you, b'shma b'kol tzakaschem, and listen to the sound of your cries, hayom hazeh, this day. Baruch atah Hashem, blessed are you Hashem, hamerachem al haaretz, the one who has mercy on the land. What are referring to here by David HaMelech and Shlomo HaMelech? And the notes, they say, David and Shlomo prayed for Eretz Yisrael to be spared from famine. That we find in Shmuel Beis and Malachim Aleph, in Samuel 2 and Kings 1. And Hashem answered their prayers. Okay? This merit we invoke in the section of where we added Tehillim Kuf Beis 102, which there it said, Tefillah ani ki yatev. No, yeah. Tefillah ani ki yatev. Right? A prayer of the afflicted man when he faints. So Hashem answered their prayers, and we say this to conclude Tehillim Kuf Beis, which describes the effects of famine. That Tehillim Kuf Beis talks about famine. So therefore, we invoke the merit of Shlomo and David, who prayed to be saved from famine. And we use that as the conclusion to the chapter of Tehillim Kuf Beis. So what happens here is that we include these sections, right? At the conclusion of the sections, we have these concluding additions and blessing. So the last example we have was when we added Tehillim Kuf Beis as the final added blessing for these fasts. We conclude with invoking the merit of Shlomo and David and Shlomo, whose prayers for a famine were answered, and we use that as a conclusion to Tehillim Kuf Beis, the Tehillim 102, which describes the effects of famine. Have a wonderful day and an easy and meaningful fast.
Thank you.